If you could have a YouTube channel about anything, what would it be about? We're in the second week of a series called Awkward. And why is it called that? Well, it's not because you need any more awkward experiences in your life. Like, we've all had plenty of those, right? It's because sometimes talking about the stuff that really matters in life can be a little awkward. But we think that church is the best place to have those important conversations about big topics in our lives, no matter how awkward they may be. And that's why in this series, we're talking a lot about sexual desires. Yes, I said it. We're talking about sex and sexual desires at church. And yes, we know it's going to be a little awkward, and that's okay. We really believe that you can handle it. And not just that, we think it's good for us to talk about it because whether we realize it or not, God cares about our sexual desires. He cares about what we do with them. And because it's important to Him, it's important to us as well. Now, some of you may be really interested in this conversation. Like, maybe you have a lot of questions. You're curious about sexual things. Like, that's great. That's great. That's completely normal. It's completely healthy. But maybe for some of you, you feel embarrassed or you feel awkward, like even thinking about or talking about this stuff. And look, I've been there. I get it completely, okay? That's totally fine too. Or maybe some of you are even wondering why it is that we're talking about this in church. Like, you might not even be interested in it or have any questions about it yet. And that's completely normal as well. Like, what you're feeling is healthy. It's normal, I promise. And no matter where you are right now on that spectrum, when it comes to thinking or not thinking about sexual things, this conversation is for you. Because God's perfect plan for our lives applies to each of us. And we want to help you develop healthy and positive thoughts and behaviors when it comes to sexual desires now as junior hires, so that they can impact your life both today and in the future. Now, before we get into this conversation, I want to tell you about a time I was totally obsessed with something when I was in junior high. You see, I grew up in a family that was musically talented. Like, one of my brothers played guitar, he was really good at it, and the other brother played drums. And so from an early age, I was exposed to drumming. Like, drumming was my thing. My brother would put me on his lap and we would drum when I was really little. And then when I got into 5th grade, I joined percussion and band. And then in junior high, I joined jazz band. And in junior high, that's when I got my first drum set. And I was stoked. Like, I remember as soon as I'd get home, I would jump on my drum set and just start going to town. And I would listen to songs and I'd try to learn them. I'd spend hours on that thing. And then when I was at school and I was in class, I would be like drumming on my legs, using my hands and feet. Teachers would get so annoyed with me. And then I would carry drumsticks around everywhere I went, so I'm like drumming on everything. It was all I thought about. It just consumed me. And you see, you could argue that I was just really passionate about drumming, but honestly, I think it was borderline obsession. And I think we all probably have something that we're totally passionate about, right? So let's have some fun with this, okay? I'm gonna give you a list of things that a lot of junior hires are passionate about. And if you're passionate about one of those things, I want you to give me a thumbs up. And if you're not, then just thumbs down. But I don't want you yelling and screaming, okay? Because you might be in someone's home, parents might be chilling, like don't be yelling and screaming. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Ready? Okay, so gaming. Any of you into gaming? What about social media? School? A dating relationship? Sports? What about your pets? Your friends? Being outside? What about Netflix? Music? Fashion? Maybe you can relate to one of those things. Maybe you're passionate about soccer, or maybe you're passionate about the latest TikTok trend, or you like looking up makeup tutorials on YouTube, or you enjoy skateboarding or hiking, or you enjoy the latest season of Stranger Things on Netflix. Maybe you're really into band, or you're into art or theater or football or church. Maybe you're passionate about a cause or a relationship or a person in your life. You see, whatever it is, everybody knows you love it because you talk about it all the time. You think about it a lot, and you give a lot of your time and energy to it. After all, you're passionate about it. What's something you're passionate about? While there's nothing wrong with being passionate about things, problems can start when passions become obsessions. So how can we tell if what we're feeling is an obsession or a passion? Well, A passion is typically a love and excitement for something that doesn't cause us to ignore everything else in our lives. It usually makes the other parts of our lives better. So, for example, like when you're passionate about soccer, you work really hard at practice and you want to become the best player, right? Or when you're passionate about being a good friend, you spend time with your friends and you think about how you can include others. Or when you're passionate about art, you paint or you draw or you sketch and you work hard to be better at it. But when it's time for you to focus on your homework, it's time for you to go to bed, or maybe your mom just says take a break, like you have no problem stepping away from it. Like you can totally step away from what it is that you're focused on or what it is that you're passionate about, and there's not a problem. But an obsession, on the other hand, has a tendency to take over our lives. It controls our thoughts and it motivates our actions. It's what we think about all the time. It's the first thing we consider when making a decision about anything. And that's because it impacts all other areas of our lives, usually not in good ways. When you're obsessed with video games, you stay up all night to play, right? Like you ignore your phone, you don't get back to your texts or your DMs from your friends, or you flip out on your little brother or sister when they interrupt you. And as a result, you start to suffer because you're not getting enough sleep, or spending time with other people, or focusing on other important things in your life. When you're obsessed with social media, you spend most of your day planning or posting to your profile, right? You zone out of in-person conversations with friends to focus on the likes on the other side of the screen. And because of that, even though your social media is awesome, your real life relationships are not doing so well. Or maybe you're obsessed with the person you're dating. You talk about them all the time. You disobey your house rules because you want to talk to them late at night. And you only want to spend time with them. And as a result, other parts of your life aren't the same. You're breaking rules, you're hurting friends, you're isolating other people from what's going on in your relationship. That one relationship is controlling every decision you make. See what I mean? Like, obsessions have a way of controlling us. They motivate us to do things we wouldn't do otherwise. They can even cause us to put other relationships at risk for the sake of them. We're willing to get in trouble. We're willing to lose friends. We're willing to make choices we regret, all because we want to give all our time and energy to one thing, our obsession. So what does this have to do with sexual desires? Well, remember that when we use the word desire, we simply mean a strong feeling of wanting to have or wanting to do something. And when we talk about sexual desires, we're talking about sexual things we feel or we think about or that we want to do. And understanding this is so important because if we're not careful, our desires can become more than just desires. They can turn into more than just something we're interested in or want or are curious about. They can become obsessions. And they can control us and lead us to make decisions that aren't the best for us. What's one way you can tell the difference between a passion and an obsession? What's one example of something that might move from passion to obsession for a junior hire? How can an obsession impact you or the people around you? Okay, so your leader is going to have an obsession or passion quiz. And see, we want you to fill this out, but we don't want you to just share this with everybody. So after you fill it out, keep it to yourself. You see, the point is, we want you to evaluate, are the things that you're passionate about turning into obsessions? And if they are, we want to help you make some healthy changes so that way we could prevent them from becoming obsessions. So take a moment, fill out that quiz, and remember, don't just start sharing it with everybody. And when you're done, I have a question for you, so let the video go, and here's the question. Did your results surprise you? Why or why not? See, in this age and phase of your life, things are changing. They're changing a lot. A lot of you are probably becoming interested in or curious about sexual stuff for the first time, even in small ways. And if you're not, that's totally okay. We still think it's important for us to talk about it right now because whether it's questions about dating or relationships or about sexual desires, we want to help you navigate it with integrity. Remember, sexual integrity is choosing to respond to the sexual things that we feel, that we think about, and that we desire in a way that respects ourselves, respects others, and respects God. It's responding in a way that's healthy, a way that doesn't control us or confuse us, a way that doesn't allow an interest to become an obsession. So today we're going to read something written a long time ago by a man named Paul. And you see, I think Paul had a lot of wisdom and guidance to share when it comes to interests and passions and obsessions. Paul was one of the major writers in the Bible. And when he was alive, Paul spread the word about Jesus and what it meant to follow him. And a part of the way he did that was by writing letters to other churches, to other Christians and churches that he planted to encourage them and help them keep living God's best for their lives. So today we're actually going to look at one of those letters. Let's check it out. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. I'm allowed to do all things, but not everything is good for me to do. Even if I am free to do all things, I will not do them if I think it would be hard for me to stop when I know I should. I love this verse because it's so clear. Basically, what Paul's saying is, yeah, I have the freedom to do anything I want, but all that stuff I want to do, it's not all good for me all the time. So even though I can do it, I'm not going to do it if it's hard for me to give it up. Now, I don't know about you, but I can definitely relate to what Paul's saying here. I know exactly what it feels like to be so excited to have the freedom to do something I really want to do, but I also know that I have to be careful to keep what I'm passionate about from becoming an obsession that controls me. An obsession I struggle to walk away from or stop. And you see, as a junior hire, I think you probably get it too. Like, think about it. The older you get, the more opportunities you begin to have. Like, you get to choose some of your classes at school. You get to stay up a little bit later. You can eat caramel apples now that your braces are off. And you have or might be getting a phone soon. Or you may even start dating. In other words, you're starting to have more freedom. But as Paul reminded us here, you have to be wise about how you use that freedom. And I think this is especially important when we're talking about things like dating and sex and sexual desires. You see, in those areas of your life, you're getting more and more opportunities to learn about, to think about, or even experience them as you grow and mature. You have opportunities to date, opportunities to see PG-13 movies, opportunities to finally have that app or social media platform that you've just been dying to have. Opportunities to read more mature books, or opportunities to look up pictures online. Opportunities to even start a physical relationship with somebody else, like holding hands or kissing or sending inappropriate texts or pictures. You see, these are things you might have the opportunity to do. But when it comes to all this stuff, I think we have to remember what Paul was getting at here. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. We might want to do something, but that doesn't mean we should. We might have the freedom to do it, but that doesn't mean that it is the best thing for us to do. When we become obsessed with something, the line gets blurry between what we can do and what we should do. And even if it's something good for us, that obsession can begin to control us. And all that freedom we're so excited about having as we grow up, well, we're letting that freedom get away. We're letting the person or thing we've shifted our attention to control us. And that's not what any of us want for you. It's certainly not the good design God has for your life. So remember, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. See, it's not that God doesn't want you to be passionate about anything or attracted to anyone. In fact, it's quite the opposite. He wants you to have a great, big, amazing, full life. I know because Jesus himself said while he was here on earth, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. You see, God wants you to have a full and exciting life. He wants us to be people who are full of passion and are excited about the things we get to experience. And remember, he designed sexual desires. He designed attraction to be a part of living your best life. So if you find somebody attractive, who do you think made that person? And who do you think gave you the ability to appreciate that person? God did. If you appreciate the way someone talks or thinks, you are appreciating a creation of God, and you have the freedom to express that God-given attraction in a way that honors ourselves, others, and God. In other words, you can practice sexual integrity. How can you tell if something is good or wise for you to do? How might doing something that isn't wise or good for you impact your life? How can creating boundaries help you avoid things that aren't wise or good for you? So what does that mean for you and me? I think if we want to live the free and full lives God wants for us, we need to start by being honest about what we might be paying too much attention to. I think we've got to get real about our obsessions. So let's start by doing these two things. First off, recognize the obsession. How can we know when a passion has turned into an unhealthy obsession? Well, we can start by looking at what consumes and controls our time and thoughts. If it's taking us away from other important things or people, it probably has become an obsession. Texting the person you like, no matter who you're with or what time it is. Ignoring your friends to spend time with that one person you're dating. Being furious with your parents for taking your phone away. Those are all signs that you're moving toward an unhealthy obsession. So start to recognize and name the obsession so you can be sure it doesn't consume you. Number 2, create boundaries. So after you recognize your obsession, the next step is to find some balance in your life by creating boundaries. You can start by talking to a trusted adult, talk to a parent or a guardian, or if you don't feel comfortable, talk to your community group leader. We want to help you create limits for yourself. And then you can figure out the first step to take to begin to start changing that behavior. You might have to make some tough choices, like breaking up with someone or having your parents put controls on your phone or limiting your screen time. But honestly, those things are worth it in the end. You'll be getting back the freedom to make healthier, wiser choices for yourself both today and in the future. Now, for some of you who are struggling with more difficult things, this step might feel totally awkward. And this is going to take a lot of courage. It might be hard for you to talk to someone about an obsession you have. Maybe you're embarrassed. Maybe you're embarrassed by that obsession, or you're worried people will think you're strange. You might think that no one else struggles with what you're struggling with and no one else will understand. But the person you talk to can handle it, I promise. They won't think you're weird. They won't think you're crazy. They're not going to think you're a bad person. They'll think you're brave for opening up and taking the first step on your path toward creating boundaries. You see, God cares about what we do with our sexual desires. And He wants us to guard ourselves from letting our interests become obsessions. When it comes to sexual things, He wants us to remember that even if we can do something, that doesn't mean that it's His best for us. Developing healthy thoughts and behaviors when it comes to this stuff is just one way we can not only honor God and ourselves, but also love and respect the people around us. And when we do this, not only will it help us to have better, healthier relationships and make wiser choices today, it will also help us in our future relationships and experiences as well. Now, I know this is difficult. I know that conversations like this one can be downright awkward, but I also know that having them is worth it because they're helping us to take even the smallest step towards God's best for all areas of our lives, including things like sexual desires. And remember, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Okay, before we end, we're going to do an activity. So you should have some scenario cards, and I want you to spread those out so you can see them all. And I want you to select a card, like each of you select a card and read it out loud. Together as a community group, I want you to brainstorm some healthy boundaries that can be set for that particular scenario. And I want you to go through at least one per person, but if you have time to go through all of them, go through all of them. That would be great, okay? And then as you're ending, we have one last question for you. This week, what's one step you can take to set better boundaries for yourself? All right, so once again, was that so bad? I hope not. I'm glad you hung out with us this week. I hope your community group time was really good. Before you go, I want to encourage you to celebrate all the good things God is doing in your life. What are you thankful for? And thank Him. And then also, what do you need prayer for? Like I say, we worship a mighty God who can do incredible things. Like he can perform miracles. He can, like whatever you think is not possible, he could do it. So what is it that you need to take to God this week? And I want you as a group to pray for one another. And then lastly, have you figured out who's in your oikos? Have you figured out who are the 8 to 15 people that God has supernaturally and strategically placed in your life? And are you praying for them? Are you inviting them to your community group? Like think about it. How God has placed you in their life to be able to share the gospel. Only you can share the gospel. Only you can reach them in ways that we can't. So be praying for your oikos this week, okay? Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week.